Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. Book, The Journey from Abandonment to Healing, Surviving Through and Recovering from the 5 Stages That Accompany the Loss of Love by Susan Anderson. Imagine your world collapsing in an instant. The person you loved, the person who once made your heart feel safe, disappears. You are left staring at the void, wondering if you will ever feel whole again. The pain is not just heartbreak. It is the raw, thick, unrelenting echo of abandonment, shaking every part of your being. But what if I told you that this very abyss, the loss, the emptiness, the grief, is not the end of your story? What if I told you that within the deepest despair lies the spark of your greatest transformation? Susan Anderson's The Journey from Abandonment to Healing takes you step by step through the fire of loss, from the shattering of your heart to the storm of withdrawal and rage, and finally to the dawn of self-discovery and empowerment. In Part 1, you confront the darkness, naming the pain, feeling it fully, and beginning to understand that abandonment is not a reflection of your worth, but the human wound that connects us all. In Part 2, you awaken your inner rebellion, transforming obsession into self-compassion, turning anger into power, and reclaiming the love that was always yours, the love within yourself. And in Part 3, you rise, reborn, whole, and ready to embrace life with courage, wisdom, and a heart open to love again. You learn that healing is not the erasure of pain, but the alchemy that turns your deepest wounds into wings. This is more than a journey through heartbreak. It is a journey into your own strength, your resilience, and your boundless capacity to love and be loved. Are you ready to rise from the ashes of abandonment and discover the power that has always been within you? Part 1. The Descent. Understanding the abyss of abandonment. There are moments in life when the floor disappears beneath your feet. The person you trusted most, your lover, your partner, your friend, turns away, and suddenly you are suspended in an endless fall. That is abandonment. It is not merely the loss of love. It is the loss of safety. It shakes the very foundation of your identity. You're left asking, who am I if I am no longer wanted? Susan Anderson begins this journey by guiding us into the heart of that fall. Not to terrify us, but to name it, to map its terrain, and to reveal that what feels like destruction is in fact the first trembling step toward rebirth. The wound beneath all wounds, abandonment, Anderson tells us, is the primal wound. It cuts deeper than betrayal, deeper than loneliness. It is the original human fear, the fear of being cut off from love, left to face the vastness of existence alone. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every loss echoes this ancient terror. But Anderson is not content with poetic sympathy. She brings the precision of a therapist, the insight of a healer, and the compassion of someone who has walked through the fire herself. She names the truth many of us resist, that abandonment pain is not only emotional, it is neurological. It lives in the body, in the brain's chemistry, in the primal circuitry of attachment. When you lose someone you love, your mind spirals. You become obsessed, replaying moments, looking for clues, torturing yourself with why. This is not weakness, it is biology. Your brain is wired for connection, and when that bond is broken, it floods with panic and confusion. The loss of love mimics withdrawal, a desperate craving for what was once your emotional oxygen. Anderson tells us, you are not crazy. You are human. The 5 Stages of Abandonment. Part 1 introduces the emotional landscape that we will travel through in the coming stages. Anderson calls them the 5 Stages of Abandonment. 1. Shattering, when the loss strikes and your world explodes into fragments. 2. Withdrawal, when you ache for reunion, caught in the grip of longing and obsession. Internalizing, when you turn the pain inward, blaming yourself, losing self-worth. 4. Rage, when anger begins to rise, no longer masked by sorrow. 5. Lifting, when hope begins to return and you reclaim your power. But before we can rise, Anderson insists, we must descend. We must understand the abyss, the inner earthquake that splits us open when we are abandoned. And that descent begins with shattering. Chapter of Shattering. The collapse of the known. Imagine your heart as a home you've spent years building. Every word, every glance, every shared memory with your beloved has been another brick, another piece of the foundation. Then, in a single moment, a breakup, a betrayal, a ghosted silence. The walls crack, the roof caves in. This is the shattering. It is the stage when the loss hits like a thunderclap. You can barely breathe. You wake up each morning with a start, disoriented, forgetting for a fleeting moment that everything has changed. And then the truth slams into you all over again. Anderson writes with unflinching clarity about this stage. The sleepless nights, the pounding heart, the nausea of grief. She reminds us that the pain feels intolerable because the nervous system is in full alarm mode. The mind interprets rejection as danger, as if your survival itself is threatened. But beneath this chaos, something profound is happening. The false self, the one that depended on another for validation, is breaking apart. What shatters is not you, but the illusion that love from another could define your worth. Anderson teaches that shattering is not the end. It is the storm that clears the field for healing. The pieces of yourself, she says, can be gathered again. But this time, you will build from authenticity, not fear. The inner child and the echo of old abandonment. In this first part, Anderson introduces one of her most powerful insights. Every adult abandonment reactivates the child within. The part of us that was once small, powerless, desperate for love and safety, awakens. That child remembers every time they felt forgotten, unseen, unchosen. This is why the pain feels larger than life, because it is. It is cumulative. It carries every echo of every loss we've ever endured. Anderson does not ask us to silence this inner child. She asks us to embrace it, to comfort it, to parent it. Healing begins not with denial, but with tenderness, with saying to yourself, yes, you were hurt. Yes, you were abandoned, but I am here now. I will not leave you. This act of self-reclamation becomes the quiet seed of recovery. The beginning of healing, naming the wound. The genius of Anderson's first section lies in her refusal to sugarcoat the process. She does not tell us to move on. She tells us to move through, to allow the pain to have its say, to let tears wash the soul clean, to recognize that grief is not weakness. It is the price of having loved deeply. In these opening pages, Anderson lights a candle in the darkness. Healing begins when you stop running from the pain and instead turn toward it. Because abandonment, in all its devastation, holds a paradox. It is both the wound and the doorway. The same heartbreak that dismantles your identity also carries the potential to reveal your true self. A promise for what lies ahead. As part 1 closes, Anderson extends her hand to the reader like a compassionate guide. You will walk through the fire, but you will not be consumed. You will feel the emptiness, but you will not disappear into it. And one day, you will stand on the other side, not the person you were, but someone stronger, wiser, and more whole. Thus ends the first descent, the recognition of pain as the beginning of transformation. Part 1 is not just about heartbreak. It is about awakening, about learning that the deepest loss can become the soil of the deepest growth. And as we turn the page to part 2, we carry with us one truth. Abandonment may have taken something from us, but it cannot take the power to rebuild. Part 2. The Inner Rebellion, Transforming Pain into Power. There comes a point, after the shattering, when the storm does not pass, but something within you begins to stir. It is faint at first, like a spark buried beneath ashes. You feel anger, confusion, longing. You question the universe. You ask, why me? You want to claw your way out of the ache that has become your daily companion. This, Susan Anderson tells us, is the beginning of withdrawal, the second stage of abandonment. But beneath its surface lies something revolutionary, the birth of rebellion, not against the world, but against despair itself. The stage of withdrawal, when love becomes an addiction. Withdrawal, Anderson explains, is where your heart becomes both prisoner and protester. You are torn between wanting to move on and craving reunion with the one who left you. You replay memories in obsessive loops. You scroll through messages, read between lines, invent reasons, cling to hope. Your mind becomes an echo chamber. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe if I had done this differently. Maybe I can fix it. Anderson, with the insight of a seasoned therapist, reveals the biology behind this madness. When we are bonded to someone, our brains release oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, a symphony of chemicals that feel like security, belonging, bliss. When the bond is severed, the brain panics. It screams for the missing chemical cocktail. Love, she says, can feel like a narcotic, the breakup like withdrawal. You are not weak because you miss them. You are not foolish because you can't stop thinking about them. You are experiencing an emotional and biochemical craving. The human brain, Anderson reminds us, is wired to connect, and therefore wired to suffer when connection breaks. But here, within this agony, lies your chance at liberation. Because when the mind can no longer cling to the other, it is forced to turn inward, to discover what was always yours, but long neglected, turning toward the self. As the days stretch into nights and the yearning feels unbearable, a quiet rebellion begins to form. It whispers, what if I turned all this love inward? What if I gave myself the devotion I once begged for? Anderson teaches us to redirect that longing, not by denying it, but by transforming it. The same passion that once reached outward can now be the fire that fuels your healing. She introduces a powerful exercise called self-reparenting. The idea is both simple and radical. You become the parent your inner child always needed. You speak gently to yourself. You listen without judgment. You learn to provide the safety, attention, and tenderness that you once sought in others. This is not mere self-help rhetoric. It is deep psychological repair. Each act of self-nurturing rebuilds the neural pathways of security. Each moment of self-soothing weakens the brain's dependency on external validation. Anderson reminds us, you are not healing by forgetting them. You are healing by remembering yourself. The stage of internalizing, the war within. As we move deeper into part 2, the focus shifts to the third stage, internalizing. This is where the mind turns the knife inward. You begin to believe that their leaving must mean something about your worth. You question everything, your looks, your choices, your very lovability. Anderson calls this stage the betrayal of the self, because in the aftermath of abandonment, the most painful wounds are not inflicted by others. They are inflicted by our own inner critic. We replay scenes, searching for evidence of our failure. We take their absence as proof that we are not enough. But Anderson exposes this for what it is. The wounded child's illusion of control. When we blame ourselves, we trick the mind into thinking we can fix the past. If it was our fault, then maybe, just maybe, we can make it right. But this false logic traps us in endless self-punishment. Anderson offers a counterspell: compassion. She urges us to treat ourselves as we would a dear friend who has suffered heartbreak, to challenge the inner voice that whispers, "You were not good enough," with one that replies, "You were enough. You are enough. You always have been." She introduces the concept of abandoholism, a pattern of seeking love from unavailable people, replaying abandonment unconsciously in an attempt to get it right. This, she says, is the psyche's desperate attempt to heal the original wound through repetition. The lesson is both sobering and freeing. Until we confront our abandonment wound, we will unconsciously attract it again and again. Awareness, then, is the first act of freedom. Reclaiming power through anger. Anderson calls anger the emotional immune system. When properly expressed, it fights infection. It restores boundaries, clears shame, and awakens self-respect. In the early stages, anger feels dangerous, even forbidden. We fear it will consume us or turn us bitter. But Anderson reframes it as sacred fire. Anger is the energy of survival. It is life force reasserting itself after being suppressed by pain. To feel anger, she says, is to say, "I matter." Anderson encourages safe, structured expression, journaling, creative release, even talking to the absent person in a letter you never send. Through this process, you reclaim authority over your story. No longer are you the passive victim of loss. You become the author of your recovery. The Phoenix moment. Every great transformation, Anderson reminds us, passes through the fire. In part 1, we shattered. In part 2, we burned. But from that fire emerges something rare. The self that no longer needs to beg for love, because it has learned to generate it from within. She describes this turning point as the Phoenix moment. You realize that you can survive the unspeakable, and that survival is not enough. You can thrive. You begin to notice glimmers of peace, fleeting at first, then growing. You catch yourself laughing again. You find meaning in small things: the warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of your breath, the quiet relief of solitude. These are not distractions. They are evidence of reawakening. The person who once felt hollow is slowly becoming whole. The spiritual dimension of healing. In the final chapters of Part 2, Anderson opens the doorway to a more transcendent truth. Healing abandonment is not just psychological. It is spiritual. Because the wound of abandonment is, at its core, the illusion of separateness. When we feel abandoned by another, what we are truly facing is our disconnection from the self, from source, from the eternal sense of belonging that exists within. Through mindfulness, journaling, therapy, and compassion, Anderson teaches us to bridge that gap, to rediscover the sacred union between self and soul. When that reconnection happens, love ceases to be something we chase and becomes something we are. A new relationship with the pain. Part 2 does not promise that the pain disappears overnight, but it promises transformation. That the pain which once defined you can become the very force that refines you. Anderson's voice rises with quiet triumph as she closes this section. The wound that once made you tremble will one day be your wisdom. The loss that broke you will become the lesson that awakens you. And the love that you begged for will become the love that flows from within you. Endless, steady, and free. The rebellion is complete. The old self has died. The new self is emerging. Part 3. The Ascent, Rising into Wholeness and Love Again. There comes a dawn after every long and merciless night. At first, it arrives quietly. The faintest light behind the dark horizon of despair. You barely notice it. The grief still lingers. The longing still hums beneath your ribs. Yet something in you has changed. The pain that once swallowed you whole has softened into something else, something sacred. You are beginning to rise. In Part 3, Susan Anderson guides us through this final movement of transformation, the lifting. It is the moment when the broken heart becomes the open heart, when the survivor becomes the creator, when love, once lost, returns, not from another person, but from the vast reservoir of self that has been waiting all along to be discovered. The stage of lifting, the return of hope. Anderson describes lifting as the soul's quiet rebellion against despair. It is the stage where the fog begins to clear, and you catch glimpses of joy without guilt. You realize that laughter does not betray your grief. It honors your endurance. You start to rebuild your life, not because the pain is gone, but because you have learned to hold it with grace. You recognize that healing is not about forgetting the one who left, but about remembering yourself. You stand in front of a mirror and see not the broken reflection of who you were, but the survivor, the one who made it through nights of tears and mornings of emptiness. And in that gaze, you whisper, "I am still here." This is the heart of lifting, not erasing the past, but reclaiming the present. Embracing solitude as sacred ground. One of the most beautiful revelations of this part is Anderson's redefinition of solitude. For so long, aloneness was the enemy, a shadow, a sentence, a proof of rejection. But now it becomes a sanctuary. Solitude, she says, is not the absence of love. It is the space where love begins to grow again. In these pages, Anderson invites us to rebuild a relationship with the self, not out of need, but out of reverence. You start to enjoy your own company. You find beauty in your routines, music in silence, and comfort in small, ordinary moments. You no longer crave constant validation because you have learned to witness yourself with kindness. The once frantic heart now beats steady, grounded in its own rhythm. Anderson calls this the return to emotional independence, the rediscovery of your internal home. You no longer depend on others to complete you. Instead, you share your wholeness with them. The emergence of self-love. What began as survival now becomes creation. Anderson teaches that self-love is not indulgence. It is an act of courage. It is the decision to give yourself the compassion you were once denied. You begin to nurture your dreams again, to rediscover forgotten passions, to honor your boundaries with the same loyalty you once gave to others. Every choice, no matter how small, becomes a declaration of self-worth. Eating well, resting, writing, saying no, forgiving, releasing. Each act is a seed planted in the soil of your rebirth. And slowly, the world responds. Life begins to mirror your inner transformation. Opportunities appear. Healthy people gravitate toward your energy. You attract not what you need, but what you are. Anderson writes, "When you love yourself deeply, abandonment loses its power, because no one can take from you what you no longer give away." Rediscovering love without fear. As you rise higher into healing, a new possibility dawns. The possibility of love again. But this time, it is different. This love is not born from desperation or the hunger to fill a void. It comes from fullness, from choice, from wisdom. Anderson teaches that real love does not erase the scars of abandonment. It honors them, because those scars are proof of your strength, your capacity, your resilience. They remind you that you can face loss and still keep your heart open. You no longer fear being alone, because you have walked through the deepest loneliness and survived. You no longer beg for love, because you have become its source. This is what Anderson calls emotional self-reliance, the ability to stand in your power and love freely without losing yourself. The rebirth, a new you. In the final pages, Anderson paints the portrait of rebirth. The new self is not a patched-up version of the old. It is something entirely transformed. You have learned to stand tall within your own being. You have learned to trust your instincts, to protect your boundaries, to honor your emotions. You have learned that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the language of real connection. You have learned that healing does not mean perfection. It means presence. It means being able to sit with your feelings, to hold your past gently, to meet life as it is without fear. Anderson ends this section with a line that hums with quiet power. The wound that once defined you has become your wings, and now you are free to fly. 3 takeaways from the book. Takeaway 1. Healing begins by facing the pain, not running from it. The first truth Anderson makes crystal clear is that the pain of abandonment cannot be avoided or ignored. The more we resist it, the more it controls us. Healing begins when you stop fighting the grief and allow yourself to feel it fully. Tears, anger, confusion. These are not weaknesses. They are proof that you loved deeply and that your heart is alive. By naming the pain, acknowledging it, and embracing it, you transform suffering into awareness. This is the foundation of recovery, understanding that heartbreak is not the end, but the doorway to self-discovery and inner strength. Takeaway 2. Self-love is the key to reclaiming power. Anderson shows that the path out of abandonment is not through another person, but through yourself. When we turn our attention inward and nurture the inner child, we begin to reparent, forgive, and comfort ourselves. Every act of self-care, every boundary honored, every moment spent in quiet reflection strengthens our sense of self-worth. The love we once sought externally is always within us. By cultivating self-love, we become emotionally independent, resilient, and capable of forming healthier, more authentic relationships. This is empowerment, the knowledge that you are enough exactly as you are. Takeaway 3. Transformation turns wounds into wings. The ultimate lesson of the journey is that abandonment, painful as it is, can become a source of profound growth. What once felt like a void now becomes a teacher. Through the stages of grief, anger, and reflection, we gain clarity, courage, and wisdom. The heartbreak that once crippled us now propels us toward freedom, deeper self-awareness, and the ability to love without fear. In essence, the wound is not a weakness. It is the catalyst for transformation. By embracing the journey fully, we rise from the ashes, stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace life and love with an open heart. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries.